Hello and welcome to Two Man Power Trip. I am your host, JP John Poz. Of course, joining me is an absolute legend, a former WCW and ECW World Tag Team Champion, one of the greatest minds ever in the history of the business, one of the greatest bookers ever, Mr. Kevin Sullivan. Kevin, how you doing today, sir?
Very good, JP. How are you, my man?
Very, very good. Cannot complain at all. But a lot of craziness going on in the wrestling business. Of course, we lost Terry Funk, your old buddy, and we lost Bray Wyatt as well. So a lot of sad times lately in wrestling.
And Abe Jacobs. Do you know much about Abe Jacobs?
No, mm-mm.
Do you know the name?
No, it doesn't ring a bell for some reason. Abe
Oh,
Jacobs.
okay. He lived on an island off of New Zealand. They raised 6,000 sheep and like 3,000 horses. And he they had a grammar school, and he went to grammar school. Then he took correspondence courses for high school. He became a great amateur wrestler. He won the national championship of New Zealand, and the year before that, he was runner up. The guy he lost to, do you know the name John De Silva?
That sounds familiar. Was he?
He was a
Trying to
big
think.
time wrestler in that part of the world, especially when
Okay,
Barnett went over there and opened it up as a territory. He was the only local guy Jim used good. And
interesting.
yeah, and the first, uh, when Vince Sr. had television, and it was out of Washington, D.C., capital of wrestling, right?
Yep.
Abe Jacobs wrestled Pat O'Connor for the NWA title, first time ever. Two New Zealanders wrestled for the title. I got a lot of this kind of information from that book we've been talking about. You know, uh, it's fictional, but it's historical too. The names have changed, but it's called Old School Volume One. But here's the other thing about Abe Jacobs. When he came over in the 50s, and he was a big star out of Chicago. You know, when Cola had that national television,
Yep.
he was a big star in Chicago and a big star in New York. He wrestled Buddy for the title. He wrestled Luthez. He wrestled Dick Hutton. He wrestled O'Connor, uh, Gene Kaninsky, and he was Ric Flair's first match. And the thing was, and I thought about this, he was billed as the Jewish heavyweight champion, right? And the island that he lived on, and he was Maori, you know what I mean? Pat Maori, that's like a Samoan,
Hmm.
the indigenous people. He was Jewish. How did the Jewish people get to this small island? And I mention that he had two stamps, correct commemorative stamps that New Zealand put out on him.
No, that's pretty cool.
Yeah, yeah. And he, what happened was he was a big star in the 50s and mid 60s. Then he went to the Carolinas and did well at first. He was tag team champion a bunch of times with Johnny Weaver, Klondike Bill, Man Mountain Mike, uh, Nelson Royal. I mean, uh, the top guys, right? And then he became a local move there, right? And that's the kiss of death. But he was doing, he always had good matches. Of course, imagine who they decided they put Ric Flair against this first match in the Carolinas was Abe. And Abe went back, wrestled all over the world, was huge when he went back to New Zealand, because he even though he was local, he wasn't. You know what I mean? He had been away like 15 years, so he drew some money there, and he died, at 95. So God bless him. And he was the manager for Ricky Steamboat's gym for years, maybe 15, 20 years. Hell of a guy.
Wow.
Hell of a guy, yeah. But I mean, he wrestled all the champions, you know what I mean? He was huge in Chicago. And imagine this, they put the first championship match on TV for Vince. They put Abe Jacobs against Pat O'Connor.
Man, how old was he? So he was 95, huh?
Yeah, I learned that from the book.
Nice long life there for sure.
Yeah, as you know, the book you can get on Amazon. It's Old School, Part 1, and you can learn a lot from it. I've learned a lot from it.
So he passed away, and like I mentioned, Terry Funk, your old buddy,
Yeah,
passed away,
yeah.
age of 79, and then of course Bray Wyatt passed away, so baby age of 36. I mean, the young pup there, just crazy. Had you talked to Terry much lately, like before he passed?
I had until the dementia really set in, And I did the last angle Terry ever did.
Where?
California PCW Ultra. He was there for a book signing. I got in the ring. I was managing Fatu, and who is as you know, boy, I don't know why that guy ain't on a big company. He is fat.
Yeah.
I was just in Utah with him, watch this match. Unbelievable. But yeah, so Terry was there signing autographs. The night before, we took him and Miss Vicky out to Korean barbecue, and they were like kids holding hands. When Vicky died, Terry went downhill immediately. But so when I got in the ring, I said, I see Terry Funk over there, and I'm waiting to ask him for 25 years. Who the hell does he think he is? He came around from the table, came up and said, I've been waiting 25 years to show you who I am. He slapped me in the face so hard, my head was like Linda Blair, right? And this is how sharp he was. I go to slap him again, and he puts up his hand and blocks me and punches me. The other thing about Funk, he did that a lot. Slap. Him and Dory would do that a lot. Slap their opponents. Yeah, to almost like psychological warfare, like a heavyweight fight. Terry was one of a kind. I mean, everybody knows that. I mean, he could be a baby face, he could be a heel. And you got to remember this. I'll tell you a real quick story. When the Funks and the Briscoes wrestled one another, they were way ahead of their time. They would shoot a match in Florida, right? A tag team match, or Dory against Jack. We would send the tape to Amarillo. They would voice over and edit it so it looked like Dory was the baby face. And
Right.
yeah,
Yep.
and then again, when they have a rematch in Amarillo, they'd send the tape to us, even though Dory's a babyface in Amarillo against Jack. We'd edit the tape that looked like Jack was the heel,
Yep.
So they were really way ahead of their time. And the other thing about Terry, why I thought Terry probably became such a prolific worker so early? Two things. When Junior had the title, Terry would go into the territory the week before. We'll say he was going to wrestle Jack Briscoe one night and maybe Jerry the next night. Well, Terry would go in the territory the week before, wrestle those guys, and he'd wrestle heel and try to hurt them. You know what I mean? There may be a bounty on his head. But he just didn't do that in Florida. He was doing it in L.A. He was doing it in Detroit. He was doing it in Montreal, in Toronto. All of Texas, the 4 territories in Texas, Houston, San Antonio, Amarillo, and Dallas. He did it in Watts' territory. So he got all this experience. Then in 72, what they used to do when Ricky Dozan had Japan Pro Wrestling, after he started sending guys to Amarillo, and after he died, Baba did the same thing. In fact, Baba went to Amarillo to get experience, and Inoki did too. Inoki wrestled as Tokyo Tom. And they would get all this public, and then later on, Shoshu, Jumbo, Saruta, they'd all go there and get all this publicity, and they came back as big stars, right? Well, there was no Guy Gene, which they were as foreigner baby faces in Japan. Did you ever see the match of Dory and Terry against Abdullah and the Sheik?
Oh, yes. Crazy match. Yep.
Where he stuck the fork in Terry's arm and it was sticking out of his arm.
Yep. Insane.
They became the biggest baby faces in Japan. And Dory and Terry were the bookers for American Talent. So that's how they got a lot of guys to go to Amarillo. I mean, because the trips were fairly long and, they didn't have any big towns. You could make a good living, but you weren't going to make a lot of money. But you made a good living. But the golden parachute was you at least got one trip to Japan, and that's when they were doing, besides the 3-week tournaments, they were doing 4 and 6-week tournaments. And if you got over there, you may get 2, possibly 3. You know what I mean? And look at all the guys from Amarillo that became stars in Japan. Hansen started in Amarillo. Brody, Tully, the list goes on. Bobby Duncombe, Terry, Dory, the Guerreros. I mean, it just went on and on and on. So that was how they got guys to come to Amarillo. And 2 guys busted it wide open as heels one time. First, Thunderbolt Patterson, and then the original Sheik. So the original Sheik and the Funks became very close. So when the Sheik got Detroit in Ohio, he'd bring the Funks in, And I got to meet the father one time in Tampa. What a presence he had. So, I mean, they had that territory up and running, and it's too bad that they didn't have a town like the size of San Antonio or Dallas, you know what I mean? Because then you would have made a boatload of money.
just watching an old interview of Funk, and he was talking about you, and he goes, "Man, he was, you know, he was great, he was crazy, but he had some great ideas and he had some bad ideas." He was saying you never ran out of ideas, but he was joking around that you had some really bad ones. You agree with that?
Oh, yeah, of course. I mean, you can't always have winners. I mean, I had some bad ones. Terry did too. You know that the everybody raves about the empty arena match, right?
Yep.
They did it wrong because the next time they wrestled in Memphis, the house was way down. You know why I say they did it wrong? Terry should have got Lawler's eye, the baby face.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So we all make, and Terry made very few, but we all come up with some ideas that are pushing the like you're painting off the easel. But Terry was brilliant. In fact, when Dory was the booker in Florida, I followed him. But after when Dory's the booker, really Terry was the booker because Dory would call Terry every day and they would book it together.
And the thing is too, I was just talking to a wrestling historian, John Snowden. We were talking about Funk because he used to interview him a lot. They were working on a Funk book, or a big Funk story. They were working on a Dusty book. They were working on all this stuff. And Funk mentioned the Lawler thing. He said, "I hated that feud. I hated that match." And he said, "Why? Everyone says it's 5 stars. They love it." He said, "I didn't make any money. We lost money. Then, like you said, they lost money." So he equated not good matches. He equated with how much money he made, which is smart.
Yeah, and that's the proof in the pudding that sometimes even the brightest of all guys, and I put Terry up there. I mean, you know the match with him and Flair and the judges.
Yep.
That was my idea. Terry loved it, and you got I want people to watch that match because before Funk gets in the ring, Rick is 1,000% heel because of Steamboat, right? 5 minutes after Terry got in the ring, Rick was a babyface when he pile drived him on the table.
Yep.
He was brilliant. Terry was brilliant.
Russell wore 89. But you know what's interesting? Funk and Flair, which doesn't get as much critical acclaim as Flair Steamboat,
Right.
Funk and Flair made way more money. Flair and Steamboat didn't. That feud didn't draw as well. Not even close.
And you know why?
No.
Because this is my opinion. It's Ric Flair's opinion too. Remember when Ricky brings his little son on the white horse and his wife wanted to be Miss Elizabeth? Bonnie wanted to be Miss Elizabeth. She comes out in the gowns. Like, that just took away from a world championship match. It wasn't like Randy, Boss, and Elizabeth around. It looked like Ricky was under her thumb. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And then here you're wrestling for the world title, and the 3 or 4 year old son is on a white stallion. It was. That's why, like you said, Funk. They don't get the notoriety, but Funk and Flair was unbelievable. I mean, I work with Terry quite a bit, and Terry, I mean, he was snug, he was stiff, but you lace your boots up tighter that night because it was Terry. And I remember Gary Juster. We all know Gary, right? He was, the promoter in Baltimore, and how he got that, you know, the WWF at the time, or WWWF at the time, had a lock on that building. And Gary had been a lawyer, and Gary petitioned them and brought up monopoly, and they gave him, you know, a license to run Baltimore and all of Maryland. And boy, did they draw big in Baltimore. They drew big in Baltimore. But yeah, the Terry. Oh, the story I was going to tell you about Terry when I said lace up my boots. Gary had a cousin, and he ran Iowa and Idaho and the northern part of Wisconsin and Minnesota. Not often, maybe twice a year. And I wrestled Terry there, and we were on last, and they tell us to go 20 minutes. So falls counted anywhere in the building, so we're going all around the building. At the 20-minute mark, I said, Terry, you ready to go home? He said, nah, I haven't broken a sweat yet. We went like 48, 50 minutes. And with Terry, it was like coming out of a combat mission. He was just the best.
Man, just everything he did. He's just to me, and I've said this before, like the perfect wrestler. You know what I mean? Like his
Yeah.
promos, his the way he handled himself, the way he carried himself, the way he wrestled, the way he brawled, the way he punched. I mean, he's just the perfect pro wrestler.
And don't forget, he was in Roadhouse and Stallone's movies. And he was the stunt coordinator in Paradise Alley. And you remember the second Rocky?
No, Rocky
ending?
Five. Rocky Five. Yeah, with
No,
Tommy Gunn.
no, the second one.
Oh, with him and Apollo Creed. Yeah.
Yeah, when they both went down on a
Yep.
double punch, that
Yep.
was Terry's call.
Wow.
Yeah, Terry was a very smart guy. He had a cool thing. You know, he lived on the Double Cross Ranch, right?
Yep.
His office was separated from the house. What do you think his office was? I thought this was the coolest thing. I've
Not
only
sure.
seen what?
I'm not sure.
I've only seen it one other time and I saw it in the Florida Keys. It was a caboose.
Oh.
You know, a caboose for a train
Yeah. Yeah.
was a caboose. I thought that was the coolest thing.
Where the hell did he get that from?
He bought it from, like what they are doing now, especially in your area. I don't know if they've stopped, John, but they used to auction them off, right? And they'd auction off regular cars. But in New Jersey, New York, they were dropping them in the water, making artificial reefs, and you could dive on them. I always wanted to go up there and dive on one.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah.
But I don't know, the Funker to me, and it's funny because he literally, worked Flair, obviously. He worked
Yeah.
Hogan in the WWF, and they were great. He worked Lawler in Memphis. That was great. I mean, he always came in, he worked with the top guy and could have a good match with anyone, and obviously drew money because everyone, kept wanting to, bring him in.
And he drew a lot of money with the Sheik, a lot. And everywhere in Toronto, when the Sheik was booking Toronto, Detroit, but in Abbey the same way. They bring Abbey to Amarillo and they draw big money. But in Japan, he wrestled Abbey and the Sheik Kimandori, and they, like I said, they got turned babyface, which I learned from the book. And they were the biggest baby faces over there. And they wrestled in singles, the Sheik and Terry and Dory. Abdullah wrestled them in singles also. They really got over. He made did you know he made an album in Japan? A singing album?
No.
Yeah, a singing album. It was like cats screaming. And he had all kinds of endorsements in Japan. T-shirts, hats, ice cream cones. He made a fortune over in Japan. And that's back it's all the way back to, like I said, I believe the year was 72 or 73 when they took over the booking. And they were making 10 grand a week there. And eventually they were making right at 20 grand.
Wow.
Yeah.
Man, it's just absolutely insane. Like what kind of guy he was and what kind of draw he was. And then for like wrestling fans, I don't think we've heard many bad things to say. I mean, I've talked to a ton of wrestlers. Nobody really has anything bad to say about Terry Funk either.
I never hear anybody say anything bad about Terry. And then Wyatt, right? Listen to this. I I think my third booking job I booked for his grandfather, Blackjack,
Right.
and uh, I wrestled Barry, I wrestled Kendall, Mike Rotunda was a very intricate part. I don't think he gets his due of the Varsity Club. I mean, one of the things, only thing I think I regret in my wrestling career is we didn't have a long enough run, and that was because the people got behind Steiner. I told you the story, right, about when I wrestled with his first term babyface against us.
No.
I, I wrestled him in Boston Gardens. So I say, Ricky, and I got with the ring announcer. I said, Ricky, you go out first and get those people chatting. Well, Marvin Hagler is in the audience on the front row with his son, right?
Wow.
Yeah.
Awesome.
So here comes Ricky, barking. Oh, boo, blah, blah, blah. The whole building starts that. Here the ring announcer goes, and making his way down the aisle right now, the dog-faced gremlin Rick Steiner from the home of the new NBA champions, the Detroit Pistons. Instantaneously, the building turned on him. I come down, and the announcer says, and our own hometown boy from Boston, from the home of the greatest basketball franchise in history, the Boston Celtics, Kevin Sullivan. I'm babyface. I get in the ring and I turn the rib on myself. Smoke is coming out of his ears. The first thing he does is we start trading punches. He grabs me, shoots me in, gives me a clothesline, and my head is like Linda Blair. I spin it around.
Yep.
I, I, I didn't take this bump on purpose. Hit me so hard I fell out of the ring on the floor. I'm pulling myself up, and I didn't set this up. I'm right in front of Hagler. And I looked at him and his son, and I looked at Hagler, and I said, Marvin, brother, I need some help. And he looked at me and said, brother, you're on your own. That's how intense Rick was. But we couldn't keep him healed. The people loved him. But the Varsity Club, I mean, Dr. Death, Mike Rotunda, and Rick Steiner, it doesn't get any better than that. And then
And
throw me in there. Here are all these guys with leather jackets, and here's this fool in a black robe. And that was Dusty's call for me to wear that, because that was the time when there were being a bunch of scandals in college athletics, speeding tickets, accidents, drinking and driving, getting busted for pot or whatever. It was like, okay, we know what this guy's doing. You know what I mean? He's taking these kids down the wrong path. They were just brilliant. And then we also had Dan Spivey for a while. I mean, it was incredible, the athletes we had.
did you ever meet Bray Wyatt, by the way?
No, yeah, well, I met him when he was getting carried around in a little bassinet, you know, with his mother and his father. They make some towns very rarely, but he'd be around in a little bassinet. Yeah, I mean,
But
go ahead.
but like you never met him as an adult.
No, I wish I
Oh,
had. I wish I had. Uh, you know, his father. You know, everybody talks about me and Dusty, but his father, I wrestled him not quite as much as Dusty, but I wrestled him if Dusty went out for a week or two, right? I wrestled him and Barry. Without his father, the first night, I don't know if I would have gotten over because we shot an angle, and back in those days, we shot the angle on Wednesday and it played Saturday and Sunday. Sometimes it play in the same station both Saturday and Sunday. And first night we're in Orlando, and that's when you could judge if an angle got over. You know what I mean? Because they just seen the TV, and the house was up. It wasn't just because me and Blackjack or Barry and Dusty. I think he was wrestling John Studd, but we were right under them, and we went to see Dusty, and Dusty said, "Why don't you guys go through 20 minutes?" And Blackjack said no. And I thought, oh God, he doesn't want to even go to a draw. He said, well, what do you want to do, Jack? He said, well, Kevin's going to get me, spike me, leave me laid. Then I'm going to send Kendall. Kendall's going to get beat up. He's going to be uh, left laying. He's going to hang him in a tree of woe and just keep running. And Barry's coming. He said, and he's going to get Barry as he's stepping through the ropes and drop him. And he said, and then Dust, you're going to hit the ring. He's going to do the same thing to you. So the first night I'm back there as a heel, I leave the 3 of the 4 of the top baby faces completely dead. And I leave the younger Wyndham dead. So if it wasn't for Blackjack and Barry and all of them, I don't think I would have gotten over as quick as I did.
for sure. And got to say again, of course, R.I.P. Terry Funk, but R.I.P. Bray Wyatt, only 36 years old. So pretty crazy. He passed
Yeah.
away at that early of an age.
Let me ask you something. You hear so many rumors, right?
Hmm.
I heard that he had the same thing that what's LeBron James's son that plays basketball that had
Bronny
yeah,
James, yeah.
that he had the same condition.
Yeah, I read that somewhere too. Yeah, something
Yeah,
with like the bottom of the heart or something. I forget how you describe it, but yeah.
yeah, yeah. And he made it through, and I think they've rectified it. He's going to play next year. So he's taken way too early, way too early. 4 young kids.
Yep.
Uh, his second wife, her dad is Jose Offerman. Do you know the name?
Oh, of course, former
Yeah,
baseball player.
yeah,
Yes,
yeah,
yeah.
yeah, yeah. Yeah. So I mean, I, I at first when it came on, you know, sometimes when you're looking at things on YouTube, there's clickbait. You know what I mean?
Yep.
And I'm saying to myself, nah, this can't be. It can't be. And then I heard another thing that he had COVID. Is that true? Twice?
That's what I read. Yeah.
Wow. Wow. What? And my heart goes out to that family because they're good people. Good people. Oh,
No doubt. No doubt.
yeah.
R.I.P. to Bray, and obviously best wishes to his family. Because man, whew, that very very rough with the four small kids, and obviously a bit of a shock because he was attempting to come back soon. So
Yeah,
pretty shocked.
that's what I mean. Nobody knew really why he wasn't wrestling. Then all of a sudden, they said he got uh, recovering from a strong illness, could have been life threatening. And then the next thing, they were planning a big return. The next thing, oh, I feel so bad for the family. I mean, we've had a lot of wrestlers' sons died this year or last year. Nash, Arn Anderson, Mike Rotunda. There was somebody else I can't remember, but horrible, horrible.
Sad year, 2023. And
Yeah.
obviously all the legends dying too. Iron Sheik and Superstar Billy Graham. Jay
Yeah.
Briscoe passed away. I mean, whew, what a terrible year. Lanny Poffo, the genius. Terrible year 2023
Yeah,
was.
yeah. And Lenny Poffo really uh, surprised me because he really took care of himself. I was never around him much, but we were friends. The little bit I was around him, we always hit it off. And the thing about him was he had no vices. When everybody was crazy back in that era, no, he wasn't. He didn't even drink except he'd have a glass of wine. Later on, when he moved to it wasn't Costa Rica, it was Panama. And he moved to Panama. Uh, I met him at a convention. He said he loved it there. That one really surprised me.
Now, as far as some questions that came in, little Ask Kevin Anything, a bunch of questions came in for you. So let's start off with when was the decision made that Sting versus Hollywood Hogan would be the main event of Starrcade 1997? Was it during that 18-month build? Thanks in advance from a wrestling historian.
Yeah, it was built for 18 months. And you know how I said the Bloodline's the best angle I've ever seen because they made baby faces along the way where we were really getting the heels over and kind of using the baby faces gunpowder, right? The only one that was unscathed and would make a comeback on them was Sting. And I was so happy to see him at that stadium show. He looked great. He's working fabulous, not just for a guy his age, but for any age. He fits in with them terrific. I like the teaming with Darby. I thought their entrance, they were in Whitechapel, the famous area where Jack the Ripper went crazy with the top hat. I thought it was an incredible job. But getting back to the question, yeah, we said this is the way to do it. And that was one that we certainly didn't rush. And
Now
Hogan
and Sting knew about the build up too. Like, hey, this is the plan.
Oh yeah, they knew, and Hogan had a lot of input on that one too. He had, and I'll tell you who else did. Scott Hall. He was the one that had chained them as the Crow. You remember the time he had the NWO shirt on and then took it off and made the comeback?
Yep.
That was Scott. Scott was a very smart guy. And One of the reasons why is he came from Florida. He got to sit around with Dusty and Eddie and Mike, who people absolutely forget about, and also Steve Kern. Steve was a very smart guy. Uh, so Scott wanted it so bad that not only did he try to improve and work hard on his wrestling ability, he worked hard on his mind too. He was very, very solid thinker.
With the buildup in 18 months, how come you did want to take it so slow with this, but other, main event matches necessarily didn't quite get this, slow build or this huge build to Starrcade like Hogan Sting got?
Because at that time, the NWO was so hot. We had great baby faces, even though they got sacrificed a lot. We had great baby faces. Luger, uh, Page, Rick and Scott Steiner. Uh, I know I'm leaving. Uh, well, the the British Bulldog. I know I'm leaving other people out, but we had enough of a great babyface roster that they could have fed those guys when they first came in. Then you could do an angle where it was, oh, WCW has a hope chance here. It was handled very well. Eric was behind it 1,000%. I think that's where Eric blossomed into his own. Uh, Again, he was surrounded with a lot of smart guys. Scott Hall, Kevin Nash is a guy that doesn't get his credit. Uh, Hogan came up with the idea of stretching it out as far as they could. So it was almost like a team effort, but I mean, that was guided step by step until the very end.
When you look at it too, that's kind of the best part is the build, not the end. Obviously, the end kind of
Right.
stinks at Starrcade '87, the match and the finish stink, but the build is great. So, is that kind of how you should book a huge feud like that? 18 months in advance, way in advance, and build it out. You know what I mean? Like you want to
Yeah.
really, really lay it out, right?
Yeah. But here's the thing. I said I don't want to be a dinosaur because you have to evolve. I don't know if people in this day and age can take 18 months. They can definitely take a year, but 18 months, and I'll tell you why. A couple of weeks ago, the Bloodline had an interview and an angle that the wrestling community kind of said, maybe they've worn out their welcome. Hey, brother, their numbers are astronomical.
Yeah, it's 15% higher than everything else in the show. Yeah.
Yeah, but sometimes, even if it's the most interesting thing, it can't live up to it all the time. And if it does, that means you have to work, which you're supposed to do, much harder to get reset that bar, because then you're tempted to do something that doesn't fit, that's silly and too hot shotting. And sometimes it's like anything else. You're in a movie, right? You're watching a movie, and we'll say it's The Equalizer, the new one that's come out, right?
Hmm.
There's all this fighting and unique fighting, but then he stops and talks to people in the village to You know what I mean? And so, what I'm saying, they bring it back down again. It's like uh, I saw the Rolling Stones. Okay, they play all their hits, and then they play something from an album that not many people know, right? And it settles them down again. You know, you can't have it burning out every time. And again, you know, you're saying, what can they do next? I became a huge Sami Zayn fan. And it wasn't just because of his work, and his work is terrific. That hell of a kick thing, it's amazing. And then when he wrestled Roman, the building went crazy for like, wasn't it 18 minutes? They gave him an ovation. Is that right, JP?
Yep.
Okay. What I found with Sammy was just his hand motions, his eyes, the way he sucked up to Roman. The one that really got me when he first tried to get in with them, he said, Roman, I accept you and recognize you as the head of the table. He said, you're very influential. He said, but Roman, I'm very influential in the locker room too. I'm kind of like the locker room leader in his hands and his eyes, and he's hesitating to say, but then when Roman doesn't react negatively, he gets overboard with it. Right?
Yep.
Could you see with now the Uso thing, Sammy trying to get back in with him? If something happened to Kevin, if there was an injury, or maybe Kevin and him arguing about Sammy, what are you doing? Oh, I'm just going over to talk to him. You know, they used to be my friends, and I'm going to talk to them and stop this silly nonsense. They could do something with him. Again, there's so many things that they could take this another year, and everybody is saying it's going to be Dustin and Roman at 40, right?
Yep.
They could even put this off.
Well, Cody, yeah. Yep.
Yeah, Cody, rather.
Yep.
They could even put this off where it was. I hate 3-man tags for the world title. Not 3-man tag.
Triple threats.
Triple threat, because you can beat the other guy, not the champion, and win the belt. That doesn't make sense to me. But you could almost have a tag match and get away with it and stretch it further. I don't think in my heart of hearts that's the thing to do. It has to be Cody. Or here's the crazy thing. Sammy drew like hell with Roman. It wouldn't take much to heat him up. Or Kevin. Or Seth. Or anybody else that they got on top there. McIntyre. They got a lot of guys that they could go with and stretch this out. I don't think they're going to stretch it out. Because, first of all, Roman's been carrying the ball a long time. I think it is time for a switch that people will go crazy. But they better have something to fall, something that hot. And I just think that whatever they're going to do when they beat Roman, they have to have a plan to really, they're going to have to really, really work hard on this follow-up than anything they've ever had to work after to replace a guy. He is the guy. And you know what I said, if it's not broke, don't fix it. But I think it's time. But you better decide who's it going to be, because to me, Sammy and Kevin and Rollins, they're true baby faces. I think Cody has a lot of heel in him. I think it comes across that way. Now, it looks like aggressive baby face, but you know, the Roman's getting a lot of cheers now, right? These other guys have got over on their own, uh, organically, starting from Kevin to Sammy. I mean, McIntyre came back after being let go. Seth Rollins, these guys got over organically. It was almost like everybody, when Cody first got in, people thought, oh, he's going to win it. I think that would have really hurt him, but they better be prepared that Cody could end up being a heel. And there's nothing wrong with that. But they better get their plan together. You don't want Cody to have to go through what Roman did when he was a babyface. Remember that?
Yep.
Just like The Rock. It's almost identical. I think they have to get their thing together, but they're doing a magnificent job. I think the wrestling business is on fire. 81,000 people. And I thought that was the best book card that they've ever had. I loved that Punk was on first to start the tone. They did a lot of wrestling. Joe and him had an incredible match. And I loved the finish on the main event. Everybody in that building thought somebody's going to turn on the other one. I love the 5-minute extra. But I loved at the end when they ended up hugging. There's so many ways to go now with that. I mean, eventually we know somebody's going to turn, but they had a lot of balls to give them that finish. And the people lapped it up because they were shocked. They got the belts earlier in the night. They thought for sure there was going to be a screw job coming up.
Yep.
I thought they did a magnificent job on the booking of the show. I loved almost every match. There was a few, and it's not the people's faults, the wrestlers' faults, because, you know, they didn't have the storyline like Punk and Joe. What did they get, a 20-year angle?
Pretty much 2003 it started, yeah.
Okay, yep. So a 20-year angle. The main event, there was the right guys at the right time and the best finish I've seen in a long time.
High praise for AEW. Surprised, yeah. But you're loving what you saw there, and obviously 81,000 people, nothing to shake a stick at. Pretty impressive.
Yeah, didn't they sell like 60 or 70,000 tickets without announcing a match?
Yep. People were clamoring for some AEW over there in England, that's for sure.
Yeah. And I'll tell you, I thought Jericho did a hell of a job for Ospreay.
Yeah.
You know,
for sure. That was a great match. Jericho turning back the clock a little bit in that match. Yeah.
Yes, he did. And the other thing is, they surprised the people. Ospreay going over Jericho, and what was it? Kenny Omega doing the job.
Yep.
So they booked that show very, very precise, I thought.
Now, as far as another question that came in, how was WCW able to turn a profit in 1995?
Well, look at the talent we had. The guys were coming into their own, right? Pillman, Austin, Flair was still there, right?
Mm-hmm.
You can go. Flair was, he was still Ric Flair. He's still Ric Flair, but he was, to me, that year was probably the best year. He had every night great matches. There was never a bad match. He was always involved too in a good angle. We just had solid guys. And the other thing, and we never give credit to people in the office, meaning they were picking wrestling towns and they were doing, in 95, we were still doing the interviews for local markets. So everything kind of fell together. Like people that had just gotten there a couple of years ago learned their craft quickly on the job about when to put out the advertisements, when to really put their foot in the gas and step it up and have the number one DJ in town involved in something, whether he was the special ring announcer or whatever. They localized the towns, and the guys. It wasn't like those interviews that we did later that were generic interviews, because we weren't in certain interviews for local markets back in the day at that time. And when we did, I think it showed, and I think they still could do it. I know the internet, but just hearing your town's name, and I think they could do this too. That would really help if they're going to run towns. Maybe they don't even have to run towns anymore. We're 81,000 people, and then WrestleManias and every other major show, the Puerto Rican show that WWE had. But maybe if they took a camera to a town and they did something different, a belt being switched, I'm not saying the world belt, but the tag team belts or the ladies championship or an angle, and put it and inserted it, it would kind of give it a little shock. Wow, I didn't know they had wrestling, because people are oblivious about stuff coming to town, right? I think it would help out.
When you look at it too, Nitro is just starting, in
Yeah,
late 95. You have Hulk Hogan. Obviously, he's a cash
right.
cow. So all that kind of puts together, you at the helm booking, Bischoff running things, it finally turned WCW in the right direction.
Yeah, I mean, we beat them the first night out.
Yep.
So, and the thing was, I especially did this. I put Brian Pillman. Mike Graham knew talent like his father. He said Pillman should open the show. And I said, who are you going to get? He said, that's your job. I got Justin Thunderlager. Now, the sheets at that time were starting to really pop up, and Houston's name was all over it. He was like the guy at the time.
Yep. Yep. Dear darling. Yep.
Yeah, he was the darling at the time. And WWE didn't have him, and I think that set the tone. That goes back to what I said about Brian. Not only did we lose a great talent, we lost a great mind. He would have been a fabulous booker.
Absolutely. Oh my God, yes, for sure. Another question here. What did you think of the planned Kiss WCW pay-per-view that was going to be called New Year's Evil? Have you heard of this? And do you like this idea?
No, I don't like the idea. You're putting Kiss above wrestling, right?
Kinda, in a way, yeah.
I mean, they're the headliners. I mean, can they be? And I don't think we got what we thought we were going to get from them. You know what I mean? This is just, again, my opinion. Like you have your opinion. At that time, people were interviewing them everywhere. They really should have pushed. Hey, we're involved in pro wrestling now, where people that had young guys that had been maybe wrestling fans when they were very young would say, "Holy shit, I didn't realize that. Let's go and see what they're doing." We should have made it a little bit more intriguing. We thought just the name Kiss would make it big. It did okay, but I think we could have done a lot better and got a lot more out of it. The only good thing I thought that came out of it was Dale Torborg. Dale is one of the nicest people I know. I've known his wife forever. I used to train at the same gym with her. You know, she was a major uh, bodybuilder. I mean, she was ripped. And I actually introduced them. So I'm not only the taskmaster, I'm the date master.
Yes. Look at
So
that. How awesome is that?
yeah, so I just saw them a little while ago, and Dale gave me he's the strength coach for the Chicago White Sox, and I got he gave me a T-shirt, not a T-shirt, a hoodie. It's a Chicago White Sox friend team, so he's a super guy. And I'll tell you a funny story. He asked me, he said, "I'm going to ask you a question. It's a little sensitive, but if you don't want to answer it, don't worry." He said, "Did you owe JJ that money for the boat? Remember when I was on Steve Harvey?"
Yes, yes.
I said, "If you believed it, then we did our job." It was so fun. It was so funny. They're such a great couple. They're such a great couple. And she's a professional rodeo woman now.
Oh, that's right. Yeah,
Yeah.
crazy. Yep.
Yeah. She's a barrel rider. And their daughter is a barrel rider too.
Oh,
When you
interesting.
go around. Yeah.
Yep.
So, yeah. They're just a great group of people. Like I said, I knew her when she was she was an unbelievable squatter. I mean, she was over 400-pound squatter, and she weighed maybe 140, 150.
Whoa, damn.
Yeah, yeah.
As far as fantasy booking is concerned, after buying out their contracts, meaning that you could have bought anybody, WWF could have bought out any WCW contracts at this point, who would you have wanted for your five-man WCW team to be at the Invasion pay-per-view? So any
But
five guys against the five WWF guys at the Invasion pay-per-view.
so can I have Hogan?
Yes.
Okay, so I'd take. Sean was on the other side by then, so I have to have the three of them.
Hogan, Hall, Nash.
Yeah, and Booker and Goldberg.
Nice, nice. I almost had the same team as you. I went Goldberg, Hogan, Hall, Nash, and Sting. as my fifth. But yeah, that's pretty good.
Yeah.
Would have been a lot better than what they did when the WWE and ECW or WCW ECW versus WWF. I mean, it was just it was a cluster. It was terrible. We talked about it a couple weeks ago. Man, what a cluster!
The only reason why I didn't put Sting on there, I mean, to me, he's identity to himself. He was so homegrown. I would have thought that they would used him like they used him when he first came in. You know,
Yep,
they didn't get behind him.
yep,
And you can see at 62 or 63, he's jumping. He's jumping off the top turnbuckle onto tables, even if he doesn't make it. And then the match, you know, they just had the coffin match, a casket match. It was, you know, he's turned back time, and he looked the best physically I've seen him look in a long time. And I like the outfit rather than the singlet that he wears.
yes, different. Yeah,
Yeah,
for sure.
yeah,
Probably a little bit safer taking those crazy bumps. Maybe
yeah.
put a little protection underneath.
That's what I thought too.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Here's a question from King Illingworth. It says, "Can you talk about any interesting stories you had of visiting Canada?"
yeah, yeah. This was before I was in WCW when I was working in Japan, and I was going to Japan uh, for FMW, and I was with Sabu and the Sheik, and I would go out during my match, and sometimes it would be me and Sabu in a tag, but usually it was him in a single, me in a single, and it was usually the Sheik was last, so they flipped me and Sabu around, but most of the time they were pushing Sabu in the semifinal, and I'd be the match before him. And we were set up one time because I was there when the when I wasn't working in Japan. Sheik had Ontario, and he was running it with the guy called the Bear Man. He died in that car wreck that the Kelly twins were involved in. Do you remember that?
Yep. Oh yeah.
And
Yep.
Adrian Adonis. Yeah.
Yep.
Okay. So I would go to Japan, and when the Sheik had an aura that in Japan, if you're afraid of something and you can touch it, it gives you great power. So they'd be trying to touch him. So me and Sabu would be out there making sure they didn't have anything in their hands or anything. But that never happens in Japan. And we worked for a promoter one night in Canada. And usually the Sheik had local promoters that they had worked with for years. And there was a problem with the money. And I didn't find out about it till later, but it was with the guy trying to short the Sheik. You don't do that.
No.
So when we get through showering, the local promoter's son comes in and says, "Come on, we got a bar. We're going to take you to the bar. We're going to take you to the bar." So when we go up the stairs, we don't go in the front entrance. We go up the stairs in the back entrance. And when I'm looking up as I'm walking out, I see all these motorcycles there. So we go up there, and it's me and Mark, and we go in, and the bar's packed, and we get kind of get nudged up to the bar. And finally, we're down by the waitress station where they flip the bar, and can walk out, come back, you know what I mean? That little hinge part of the bar. Do you know what I'm saying, John?
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Okay. So we're down there, and this biker comes up, and he goes to Mark, "You're a big bastard," and starts pushing. Oh, look at the muscles on you. He starts pushing Marky. I thought, oh boy, this is too much, man. And then we're circled by about 4 of them, 5 of them. And I looked at one of them, and he had a knife hidden in his hand. I said, they're going to try to cut us pretty good. So I look at the end of the bar where the trash can is. There's a 40-ounce vodka bottle. The guy starts to come lunge forward. I reached down, I got the bottle and hit him across the head.
Oh, nice.
So he was in such a state of shock, he didn't even go down. He just kind of went to his knee. And he was about 6'5", so now we're at the same level. I hit him over the head with it, right? So now they all back up, and as he's stumbling through the bar, and we're on, like I said, the 3rd floor. Mark takes a full beer and hits him in the back of the head with it, cuts his own hand, and he kicks him down the stairs. I said, we got to get out of here. Now, one of the ring crew had come with us. He said, I got a car, let's go. We didn't get down all the way to this. We got halfway down the stairs, and the cops were there. It was a setup.
Big time, yeah.
Yeah. So we get an old cop, and he puts us in the car. He starts talking about MAME charges. It's like, oh, Jesus Christ. We're not going to get out of here. We got a problem. We're going to have to get lawyers and stuff. So when me and Mark get to the police station, a younger detective, when I say younger, he's probably in his early 40s, said, I need to talk to you guys. This is serious. So we go into his office, and he turns the blinds so nobody can see. He said, I know that guy you hit. I said, uh-oh. He said, my brother has a motorcycle, and the guy was envious of my brother's motorcycle, forced him off the road, and they beat the shit out of him.
Whoa.
He said, I want to thank you guys. He said, but here's what you're going to do. You're going to get in your car tonight. You can call. He knew the Sheik was running the show. He said, you can call the Sheik when you're on the road. If you can call his hotel, you're gone and you're off this tour because they're going to retaliate. So me and Mark went back to our hotel room. We packed our bags in 5 minutes through it, and we got out of there. That's how dangerous some of those clubs were back then. It was all because they wanted to stiff the Sheik money. Well,
Yep.
We weren't the guys that were paying or involved in the money transactions. They were just going to think me and Mark, Sheik was on top of me and Mark with the tag guys, and then we were just breaking Sabu in. In fact, he was refereeing. And I was never so happy to go through customs when we got to the other side. And I was afraid when we go on the other side, somebody would have said something, but it was, the United States side, so they didn't hear anything. But yeah, that was, and I absolutely loved working in Canada. Absolutely loved it. I just went up there a couple of months ago, and they had a great house. Uh, Brought in great talent. It's a and I enjoy, well, I'm about 20 minutes by boat, a regular boat to Vancouver Island, Victoria.
Oh, I didn't realize that. Wow, pretty damn
Yeah,
close.
yeah. I mean that, but if I got to take a ferry, I got to go over the mainland and then go up. You know what I mean?
Yep.
But as you know, I like the outdoors. There's a documentary on Netflix called Sea Wolf, SEA Wolf. They're the only known wolves that 70% of their diet is fish. They actually swim and dive down. They catch regular fish, and they bring up lobsters and shellfish. Pretty amazing. And they swim from, there's like right across. I could show you right across from me. Can you see the ferry?
Yep.
Okay.
I see it. Yep.
That little island over there, 144 people live on it. So there's a lot of little islands around up there, and they'll swim from island to island. It's pretty crazy.
Nice. Pretty
Yeah,
cool.
and they got some great wildlife there. Every time we go, we usually I'm enthralled with the wolves. They hide a lot, but I saw a pack of them just swimming and diving one day. A friend of mine I know that lives up there brought me to a place he knows, and it was crazy. Crazy.
Here's an interesting question for you from Jordan Ave, 1997. Is there a particular match type that isn't done a lot that you would like to see more often?
If set up right, like when Wahoo would do it and Billy Graham and Dusty would do it, a strap match. But it has to be the blow off of first you have a match, maybe there's a DQ or a screw finish. Then you have another, a series of matches. And this is how you can get more than 2 or 3. Dusty had 4 with Billy, I believe, didn't he? And that was the blow off, the strap match, right?
Right.
So, I mean, usually 3's the limit, in New York back in the day. But Dusty got 4 with Billy, and done right with the right people, especially when you had Wahoo. Done right, it's an exciting match.
Was there New Japan Pro Wrestling talent that you tried to get over for a WCW tour, but they just wouldn't let you have them? That was from Wall Jam 43. So, was there New Japan guys that you wanted you couldn't get?
Here's the thing. I was in the negotiations. That was the only time I ever negotiated along with Eric. They wanted to hear from my lips what was going to go on. And in Japan, you have a meeting to set up a meeting to set up a meeting, right? So Eric and I flew to Hawaii, had a wonderful time with Eric, and his wife was along with him, wonderful lady. Eric and I went out in a boat with King Curtis's son. He took us out, a big catamaran. We were diving in the water with some porpoises. So it was a great time. So when I got there, and Eric and I were, and I had known Saito for quite a while. So when we got there, they said, Watts had destroyed. You heard about that, right? When they had the first relationship with Watts.
Yes. Yep. Absolutely. Killed it. Yep.
Okay. I said to them, "You tell me what you want. If there's any reservation on my part about a finish, I will get in touch with you guys and we'll work it out." That's why I kept Norton so strong on TV, because he was their guy at the time. And I was very, very conscious of keeping my word, because we were getting paid $1 million a year from them. We could use their talent. We didn't have to pay for their talent. On the flip side, when guys went to Japan, they got their money, plus you got paid it from home. But you're only missing maybe three shows. But the regulars were going over 2-3 weeks at a time, right? And almost every tour. So the question is, did I have a problem? Suppose I wanted Chono, but he was in the middle of an angle. They would say, "Kevin, here's we got him in a big angle, but he's he's one of the guys in the office that we trust. If you need him that bad, we'll give him the 2 days off of the TV you got to do." And I would say, "No, I can wait," because I didn't want to put those guys flying from Japan, getting off the plane, working on a Monday night, going to TV on a Tuesday, and then getting on a plane that night. I wanted to show that we weren't going to do what Watts did. We were going to treat them humane. We got Sonny Ono to be the van driver when we had more than one or two. Beautiful van. Sonny would set up where they'd stay at the same hotels that we stayed at, but we stayed at multiple hotels, the guys. But they would always stay at the office hotel. Sonny would take them to get breakfast, lunch, and dinner. If there was a question, if they needed to go to the mall, we treated them superbly. I would say that their guys went over 85% of the time, unless they were young boys, and they would specifically say to me, "No big head, beat them." And I'd say, "I got to give them a win. In my way of booking, I got to give them a win. I don't want to kill them off." They say, "Okay, you can do that, but let us know how many wins they get, because what we'll do is they'll send as we had the Japanese talent there. When they would get a win, they'd put the stuff in Gong magazine in the newspaper." So that was one of the things I was really, really diligent at. I wanted that relationship to be very good, and they were very good to me. So go ahead, sorry.
I was going to say I always wanted Shinya Hashimoto in WCW. He was awesome from New Japan.
Yes, yeah. Something fell through where he was supposed to come over, and I think it was our fault, not theirs, because we had Muta and we tried to get them both to come, and it would have really. It wasn't a Tokyo Dome show, but I think it was, what's the smaller building?
Kurgan Hall.
Kurgan Hall. And they had built up an angle, and I don't know if they were against each other or tagging, or there was involvement. And they said, well, we can change it if you want. And after I've dealt with them so long, I just knew their body language. I said, no, we'll do it another time. So we had a wonderful relationship with them. And they, again, as I said, they were very good to me.
If you had a movie about your life and there was a movie about you, what actor would you want to portray you?
Brad Pitt. I don't know. I couldn't even tell you.
What about Pacino? That would be kind of cool.
Yeah, Pacino would be cool.
He's not
Yeah,
the tallest guy in the world either, or
yeah,
that would be
or
kind of cool.
Sly.
Yeah,
Sly.
Sylvester Stallone's not that. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, I'm even taller than him. So
If Hulk Hogan said no, and you'd have to pick somebody else as the third man, who would have worked better, the Macho Man Randy Savage or Bret the Hitman Hart?
I here's my thinking on that. Brett just got screwed, right? Why would he join supposedly a WWE breakaway?
Right.
It'd have to be the Macho Man.
Makes sense. Very true.
Yeah.
From Front Row Joe, what do you think of an independent company running and selling out a show at the Mall of America in Minnesota?
Well, I thought they did a good job. I thought uh, it was uniquely done. And this was Eric's idea, along with Hogan, because he wanted to get the Pasta Mania in there, remember?
Yep.
But it came from a different place. It looked completely different. It was the yin to the yang of the ECW arena, right? It was, ECW arena was all guys, and the building had rats the size of dogs. Here we
Yep.
are at the biggest mall in America, where people, was it 3 stories that they're on the balconies? I think it got over very well. And again, that was Eric's idea along with Hogan's. Eric had some. The funny thing is, people give Eric grief about a lot of things, but they don't understand. He was building something out of ashes and just small things like that, going to the Mall of America, going to Sturgis. Now, I didn't particularly like going to Sturgis because usually that time of year, for some reason, it was hot as hell out there. But I used to stay in Custer, Wyoming. I loved that. And then, I got to go to Mount Rushmore. I loved it, just going the visuals there. But it would be hot as hell, and we'd be outside, you know what I mean, during the day. But Eric did an amazing job finding different locations.
How come WCW never did a pay per view in the UK?
Uh, I may be way off on this. I don't think our TV ratings over there, and it's like, AEW did so well because their television's on regular TV. I believe that WWE, their television is on like a pay channel, like a Netflix or something.
Yeah. Yep.
We were on that same type of thing, and that was when cable was first coming in over there. So it was very expensive. And the logistics at the time, I don't know if Turner was capable of pulling that off correctly.
What was the original plan for the Latino World Order?
I hated it. I hated it. I hated it. I mean, we were at that time we were passing T-shirts out, NWO, right? Then we went to two NWOs, right? Black and white, and then Wolfpack.
Yep.
We didn't need the Latino World Order. They were an entity to themselves. I mean, and now if you got them together, how do you have them wrestle each other where it makes sense if they're a gang? I think they don't get their due either. And I've said this before. Conan didn't get his due. You think I knew who Lapaka was and Silver King was or Hoovy was? It was Conan directed me who to bring in. Of course, he brought Ray in first, so he did miss, and then
Yeah.
Hoovy.
Yep.
All the guys he brought were terrific. But I just didn't like it. I thought it kind of made them a copycat, and they were so unique. I'd like them to be as unique as they possibly can. And the other thing is mistakes we made. No, mistakes I made. I saw a documentary on years ago on Lucha Libre. And, there's a lot of mysticism in it. Are you aware of that?
Oh yeah. Yep.
Okay. And are you aware the first Lucha Libre with a mask was American?
No, had no idea.
It was Sterling Gold, not Golden, Sterling.
Oh, Sterling Golden, Hulk Hogan.
No, yeah, Sterling. He was in Texas. There's a story. He used to do the Gorgeous George gimmick in Mexico. He's from Houston. Same street that Jesse James, the wrestler, and Gorgeous George lived on. And when he came back, he was using a Gorgeous George type gimmick. George went up to him when he was just regular wrestler. He says, "Are you going to use that in the States?" He said, "Hell no." He said, "Take it." Not Sterling, Dizzy Davis. Look him up.
Dizzy Davis.
Look him up. He broke his son out of prison in Mexico, hired a bunch of mercenaries, and he broke his son out of prison.
Oh, also known as Sterling Davis. Yeah. Okay. Yep. Sterling Dizzy Davis. Yep.
Yeah. He had a move that when I was a kid, I knew where the move came from. They still use it today, but they don't. I don't think they ever credit to Davis. What it was is, suppose you and I are wrestling, John, and you're beating the shit out of me, and you back me into the ropes, right? I would put my left hand down and push the ropes and jump up and sit on them, right?
Yep.
Then I put my leg in between your two legs, grab you by the head, and go over backwards and take you outside the ring that way. That was called the Dizzy Davis. He tried to run opposition in Houston or Dallas. I'm not sure which one. You can look it up. They actually burnt his building down, and I believe they burnt his house down, the office. So,
Wow. Wow.
yeah,
Crazy.
yeah.
Absolutely crazy. So, were there wrestlers asking to be added into the NWO? Were there any that were denied, or were there any who declined but being put in when you asked them to join? That is from the Fantasy Handbook. Great question.
It is a great question. I never remember anybody denying to go in. Everybody wanted to be in, and I think that's what the problem was. It's like I said before, I wanted to keep it to the original four: Hogan, Six, Nash, Hall. The only other one that I thought could have been in there and would have fit was Scott Steiner. I couldn't see any. I couldn't. We did it later, but Luger was homegrown. There were so many homegrown guys, and Buff. The reason why I wouldn't be crazy about Buff going in, he was homegrown. They lost the idea that this was an invasion, not from Dallas office, not from the Florida office, from Vince McMahon. So when you have no relationship with New York, why would you be involved in it? And the other thing was, Hogan was the world champion, Macho was the world champion, Kevin was the world champion, Scott was the Intercontinental, and Six was the junior heavyweight champion from New York. So what are we going to do? Have the TV champ from Arn Anderson, the TV champ from grew up in TBS, and have him on the show? I didn't see how that would have worked. And I'm not just saying because it was Arn. Arn's one of the greatest workers of all time, but he hadn't gone to New York yet. And even if he did go to New York, it wasn't that he was a homegrown WCW guy.
Absolutely, for sure. Obviously, DDP is one guy that did not join. That was great that he didn't join because that got him more over by not joining the NWO.
That was one of the smartest things that the NWO, that was their design, not for him to go over, because I really believe he wanted to be there with them. You know what I mean?
Yep.
Because he had managed them both, right? Kevin and Scott. He wanted to be in that position. He had worked hard for it, but I think that got him over not being part of it.
Big time.
And I'll tell you something. I just watched his match with Goldberg. I liked it when I first saw it, but it was an incredible match.
Yeah, it's awesome.
And I'll tell you why it's so incredible. Bill was not prepared to have that kind of match. And I know that Page wrote his stuff out like Randy. But for Bill to pull it off like he did, he was a young man in the business, just used to squashing guys or just doing the usual selling of the heat. He was actually doing some great moves with Page, especially when Page hit him out of there. When he went to Bill went for his finish, and Page ended up giving him a diamond cutter, and they're both laying there.
Yep, awesome.
Page did an amazing job. I don't think he gets the credit, and I'll be the first one to admit when he was going up the ladder, I didn't think he had it in him to be that good. But every match he had, he dissected it time and time again. And every match he had, in my opinion, got better and better. And it ended up by showing the Goldberg match.
For sure.
Yeah.
What is your favorite movie? What is your favorite TV show? And who is your favorite band?
I used to really like 9 Inch Nails.
Oh.
Yeah. And I'm still a Bob Dylan fan. he's gotten away with a lot of shit in the last decade, but when he first came out, he was so different, you know what I mean? And everybody tried to copy him. And what was the other question? What's my
Favorite movie and favorite TV show?
Breaking Bad, my favorite TV show, along with The Sopranos. But movies, there's so many great movies. I guess The Godfather. You know,
Nice, good
yeah.
choice. Yeah. What's a storyline during your time as WCW Booker that never got the green light, but you wish it had? That's from DFW.
I wanted to do an angle, myself, with Fit Finley. Because I'm first generation Irish, right? But I'm from the Republic of, my family's from the Republic of Ireland. He's an Ulsterman he's from the UK, which is in Ireland, you know, Northern Ireland. Are you aware there's two countries in Ireland?
No, never even crossed my mind to even think about it.
Yeah, and you got to go through checkpoints. And at one time, up until maybe 20 years ago, you know, they were killing each other. Are you aware of that?
Recently?
Up until 20 years ago.
Wow, okay.
I mean, one time, it was, you know, U2 wrote Bloody Sunday.
Yep.
There was a soccer game, and it was in Northern Ireland, but it was Republic of Ireland versus the UK Ireland, Northern Ireland, and they came in with tanks, knocked the walls down, shot the Irish side up, you know what I mean? And then they had political prisoners that actually starved to death, Bobby Sands. And I mean, there was heat, real serious heat. There was bombings all the time. At one time, there was a wall in Northern Ireland. The Catholics were on one side, the Protestants were on the other. And you had to go through the checkpoint every day if you worked on one side or the other. But a little bit early, maybe 30 years ago, if you were Catholic, you couldn't own your own property in Northern Ireland. So there's been many books written about it, a lot of movies written about it. And I mean, it goes back to, Ireland's only, the Republic of Ireland became a country, its own country in 1922. They're the only people that had a war, a civil war over a peace plan. The English were going to let them have their own legislature in Northern Ireland, but they didn't want it. They wanted the whole country. Winston Churchill, whose mother was American, but he spent his youth in Ireland, was going to do it for 7 years and then give Ireland back to the Irish. In fact, Paul McCartney and the Beatles used to have a song, "Give Ireland Back to the Irish." And I mean, it was vicious. When I was a kid growing up in South Boston and in Cambridge and all of it, there were these big pickle jars at the end of the bar. Had no label on it, and people would be dropping money in there. That was to buy guns for the Republic of Ireland.
Wow.
And when you flew into Boston at those times, it showed this child with a tear coming down. In the background is fire and cars turned over. And it would say, support the Irish Republican movement. They couldn't say the IRA because they were considered in England as a terrorist group. If you ever want to look up Bobby Sands.
Okay.
He died in prison. They didn't have toilets in the prison, their cells. So when they shit, they have to rub it on the walls, right? And once a week, because there was no toilets.
Right. Yeah. It's crazy. Yeah. Yep.
Once a week, they come in with these big fire hoses and wash the shit down. They didn't allow most of the guys to wash their clothes. So they had blankets with holes in it, walked around like that. It's an amazing story. Amazing story.
Pretty crazy. Absolutely crazy. Aaron wants to know, what did you think of the WCW Nitro Grill?
I thought, you mean the restaurant itself? Or,
Yes. Yep.
yeah. Don't you? How do you follow them having a restaurant in Times Square?
Not well.
Yeah, we all make mistakes, and I just believed this show that AEW did really opened my eyes because I thought it was the best book show they've ever had. But I hear, especially guys from my generation, oh, they do flippy floppy. Yeah, okay. Do this finish for me. Let me take your hands behind your back, and I want you to do a flip, a moonsault, and land on the casket, and the guy move. Come on. I know what they're trying to do. The guys say, oh, they're going to hurt themselves. Yes, I know they're going to hurt themselves. I don't think they should do it every time, but it's like this. Some people, including myself, love sushi. Some people say, I'm not going to put raw fish in my mouth. Let's go have some pasta. I like it that it's different. I wish they weren't having, and JP, I got to ask you this question. All this internal strife, do you think they're starting to work with this shit?
Maybe. I think there definitely is a possibility.
Because it goes on and on and on. I just heard about the thing with Punk, and I listened to it, and the story's changed a little, right?
Of course, yeah, big time.
Yeah, but he comes up and chest bumps Punk before he goes to the ring. And then other things. I mean, if this is real, some psychologist needs to come and have a sit down with everybody that works there and explain to them what mentally is going wrong somewhere. Do you know what I'm saying?
Yeah, it's not good. They needed some sort of sit down. It's terrible. Yep.
Yeah, and it got to come. I don't think Tony needs to do it. Where people saying Tony needs to do it, I think Tony needs to be out of that position because he's going to get heat with somebody that he doesn't need to. And I don't understand it because he's paying them all well. But I think if a professional came in and went over everything and said, listen, you don't have to love one another, but this is a business. And if you were a major company, a bunch of you would never have jobs here anymore. So my recommendation to Tony is get to the bottom of this and get rid of who the problem is. You can't, the reason why I say this, and again, I may be wrong. What if Punk got in a fight before he went out and as they go to pull him apart, somebody steps on Punk's bad foot or jerks his shoulder and he can't go out to the start of the show that drew 81,000 people.
Yep, insane.
You can't allow this unless they're working. Unless this is a long range idea, and I don't think it is, but unless somebody's put this thing together and came up with what they're gonna do. Okay, other than this, they're gonna step on a landmine and something's gonna blow up. Someone's gonna push somebody, he's gonna fall off the stage and split his head open. Something bad, nothing good is gonna come out of this. And I just don't understand what they don't see. You know, one of the guys I really admire and like, Eddie Kingston. Now he's supposed to be a hothead. I never hear any shit about him. Is there?
Not really. Besides, he got into, I forget who he got into. He got into it with somebody, but it was just like, yeah, like he just kind of pushed him, whatever. It was nothing too crazy. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, that shit happened before, but I'm talking about them going into business on their own, which makes nothing about drawing money, unless it's a work. But I don't think it is, because we all in the wrestling business have a tendency to say, "Oh, they're working." No, they're not. So
No, not here. Yeah.
yeah.
If Eric Bischoff had bought WCW in 2001, would you have stayed with the company?
If he would have had me, yes. Eric, I mean, because by that time I had gone, you know what I mean? So sometimes out of sight, out of mind. I'm pretty sure he would have invited me aboard. But the other thing is, if Eric got it, I think he had seen the mistakes he made, the mistakes the company made, and he would have really started to push and intermingle the older guys.
Yep.
Yeah.
I don't know if you'll know this. What was Vince Russo's best idea in WCW?
Wow. What was his best idea? Booker T being champion.
Nice. I agree for sure. Who is your Mount Rushmore of professional wrestling from Keyboard Joe?
There are so many great ones, right? Let's go do it this way. Eras, okay? Do you know who the fourth largest drawing guy in the history of the wrestling business is?
Jim Londos?
Yeah. He was drawing the Depression. And they go to he was the champion. I told you about Boston being different, right?
Yep.
He would go to Braves Field 1 month, draw 45,000. The next month they go to Fenway Park. Fenway Park, as you know, only seats 35. They sell that out everywhere he went. Okay, then let's go to Buddy Rogers. Buddy Rogers and Pat O'Connor, 35,000 in Comiskey Park. How can you forget Bruno Sammartino? How can you forget Hulk Hogan? How can you forget the NWO as a group? How can you forget Ric Flair? How can you forget Steve Austin, the Heartbreak Kid, The Rock, Roman Reigns right now? I don't know. It's every generation has a different guy, but how long has since Backlund? How long has somebody held this belt for 3 years or close to it?
Right, been a long time, and since Hogan, yeah, yep.
So every generation, other guys come, and it's objective. It's what you like. How can we forget? We're talking about Terry. How can we forget Terry? How can you forget Jack Briscoe? I mean, because I believe the business is built on what the era did before. And Terry went through different eras when it was strictly kayfabe, when there was entertainment value came in, and he adapted where other guys couldn't. So, and then I go to Argentina Rocca, right? I mean, he sold out the Gardens a bunch. In his time, superstar Billy Graham, what did he sell the Gardens out? 19 out of 20 times. There's just so many, it's hard to say for me anyway.
Yep, for sure. Now, as far as the Army of Darkness is concerned, do you think the Army of Darkness was the best, the Varsity Club, or the Dungeon of Doom, as far as gimmicks that you were a part of?
The Varsity Club was the best because had such great guys in it that had real legitimate amateur records, and they worked like they're almost like fraternity guys. Rotunda and Rick would be bitching at each other, right? Dr. Death would be bitching at Rick, and then he bitch at Mike for bitching at Rick. They were great. Now, when I was in Florida with Dusty, it was a whole different thing. It was blood and guts, evil against the American dream. And Dusty Rhodes, I had Mark Lorne, okay? Dusty Rhodes said Mark was the greatest babyface and greatest heel he ever saw. That's a high compliment from Dusty. So, and then that video we did, that was one of the first videos where I conjured him from the sea.
Yep.
Mark looked like a tank, had drawn money all over the world, knew we do this sometimes. We get in the car, and Mark drove 100 miles an hour. So we get in the car, and he'd look at me and say, "Where do you want to go today?" And I'd say, "Bring me to Malaysia." And he'd tell about everything about wrestling, the country itself, the experiences he had. And he was just entertaining, but his work was so solid back then. Different type, but very solid. But yet he was one of the best baby faces of all times. Vince Sr. called him the greatest babyface he ever had.
Wow. Holy
Yeah.
moly.
Yeah.
Would you ever consider or think of it if you got inducted from Leon? Would you ever, or what are your thoughts if you got inducted into the WWE Hall of Fame? If the invite came, would you accept it? Do you think it will ever come? And who would induct you?
No, I don't think it'll ever come because I didn't work for Junior. And rightfully so, I believe, because I didn't work for him. So it'd be like that I was playing in the Japanese league, you know. Remember Ono, the guy that hit all those home runs?
Oh yeah, yep.
Yeah, yeah. So it's a completely different thing.
Or is it Satahora O or what was his
Instead
name?
of oh, that's it,
Yeah.
right? Yeah. So it's a whole different uh, ball of wax I was in. So
All right, one final last question for you. Would the Kevin Sullivan Devil, quote unquote, gimmick work today? And could you have made Bray, aka the Fiend, a good long term character? So I guess it's a little two parter there. Would the Devil work today? And then how would you make Bray, aka the Fiend, a more long term gimmick?
well, I think he was pretty close to it. I mean, I do not want to say that uh, he follows up what I did. I think he must have saw some of what I did, but his thing was completely different. My thing was like slasher movies, right back in the
Yeah.
80s. His was really psychological. I loved when the way he portrayed everything. It was much more scary in today's day. And that thing he did in the corner where it always looked like that Japanese movie where the woman's walking on her, you know, hands and feet upside down. Do you know which one I'm talking
Yeah,
about?
that like spider crawl or whatever it is.
Yeah,
Yeah, yeah.
I I, I related that to him, that was him. He was in a completely different era, and to me, he would ended up if he continued on being the closest thing to the Undertaker since the Undertaker.
Do
And
you think the Devil could work today, or maybe even he played like a more of a devil, or no?
not the devil, but because of the difference in the country today. But the devil can be Charles Manson, right? The devil could have been
Hmm.
Ed Bundy. He could have played that. But I, one of the things I thought, when they gave him, what's the girl's name? The little blonde? Alexandra Bliss.
Oh, Alexa Bliss. Yeah.
In my head, as I was watching him with her, you remember when they used to do the dark interviews when uh, they had the three guys together, you know, with the goat's head and that, right?
Yep.
Could you see a rocking chair, a woman in a granny dress with gray braids, just two, pigtails?
Hmm.
Spit, I don't know if they could allow you to, they'd have to put up nicotine, maybe they wouldn't have to. But if she had a tin can and when they lost, she'd ask him, not him, but one of the partners, right? What happened? And he starts to say, well, this, and this. And she spits in the can with that old-fashioned snuff. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
That the country people used to use, and says, "You don't say," and you never see her face. And she has a switch, and she starts like hitting her leg. Oh, you don't say, you don't say. It would give them, or it would have given him, rather, a Abbott to his Costello. It would have given him a Wolfman to his Frankenstein. It would have given him, when Cruz and the interview with a vampire. You know which one I'm talking about? Tom
Yeah.
Cruise. Yeah.
Yep. Interview Vampire. Yeah.
It would give him that because remember there was a woman in that, and then the child. Yeah, I think it would have just given him a. He didn't have to have it for long, but I think if he had something like that, he even could have got scarier. But who am I to say? Because I thought he was going to be one of the biggest. He was for his short, brief period of time. I thought he would have turned into the the Undertaker, and that's hard for me to say because the Undertaker to me has drawn more money than anybody in the history of wrestling. But I could see him getting to the Undertaker status because the Undertaker had Kane, he had Paul Bearer, he had other people that came in and out, but he was always the centerpiece. Just to give something a little different flavor, I think that would have worked out completely. Maybe it's just me, but I think there's something scary where you don't see anybody's face, and then you start wondering, is it a guy or a woman? Who could it be? And if they kept it kayfabe like they did Uncle Howdy, I think it would have been a very good idea.
All right. Let's head towards the plugs. You can follow me on Twitter and Instagram at Two Man Power Trip. Check out the website at tmptempire.com. Kevin, you can check us out coming up on September 30th. Rockaway Mall, Rockaway, New Jersey. 90s Con. It's going to be big. We're going to be there live and in color. What else you got going on in this crazy world?
Well, I'm going to be going to West Virginia the week before I see you for a seminar and an autograph session. So I'm looking forward to it. Looking forward to it.
All right. Great stuff as always, Kevin. Thank you, everybody, for tuning in. See you right back here next week. Have a good one, folks.